I was the one holding the scalpel when everyone else had given up. Funny how life works, right? The person who spent years telling me I was worthless, that I would never be good enough, that I was a waste of space in scrubs. That person was now lying on a gurney, eyes wide with fear, begging me not to let them die. And I was the only one in that entire hospital who knew what to do. My name is Sarah, and I need to tell you this story because for years I carried it like a weight on my chest. For years I believed what they said about me. I believed I was useless. I believed I didn't belong in medicine. I believed that maybe nursing school had been a mistake, that I should have just stayed working at the grocery store, scanning items and bagging groceries, never dreaming of anything bigger. But that night, that one impossible night, everything I had been through suddenly made sense. It started 12 years ago. I was 28 years old, fresh out of nursing school, excited, terrified, ready to change the world one patient at a time. I had worked so hard to get there. My family didn't have money. I had worked 2 jobs while studying, sleeping 4 hours a night, surviving on coffee and determination. When I finally got my nursing license, I cried for an hour straight. My mom cried with me. My little sister hugged me and said I was her hero. I felt like I had won the lottery. I was going to help people. I was going to make a difference. I was going to prove that someone like me, from a poor neighborhood, with no connections, could succeed in a hospital. My first job was at Memorial Grace Hospital, a big place in the city, the kind of hospital where doctors walked around like they owned the universe. I was assigned to the surgical floor, and that's where I met Dr. Catherine Brennan. She was the head of surgery, 45 years old, brilliant, famous, the kind of surgeon other surgeons talked about with reverence. She had published papers, won awards, performed procedures that seemed impossible. Everyone respected her. Everyone feared her. And from my very first day, she decided I was her target. I don't know why she picked me. Maybe it was because I was new. Maybe it was because I was quiet. Maybe it was because I reminded her of someone she hated. I never found out. But from day one, Dr. Brennan made my life absolutely miserable. She would call me into patient rooms just to point out mistakes I hadn't made. She would ask me questions in front of other staff members, medical questions I couldn't possibly answer as a new nurse. And then she would laugh when I stumbled over my words. She called me slow. She called me incompetent. She told other nurses not to trust me with important tasks. She said I was a liability, that I was going to hurt someone, that I should never have been hired. The worst part? Nobody defended me. The other nurses felt bad for me. I could see it in their eyes, but they stayed quiet because crossing Dr. Brennan meant making your own life hell. The hospital administration loved her because she brought in money and prestige. She could do whatever she wanted, and what she wanted was to destroy me piece by piece. I remember one day, about 6 months into the job, she called me into a patient's room. The patient had just come out of surgery, and I was monitoring his vitals, checking his IV lines, doing everything by the book. Dr. Brennan walked in with 3 other doctors, her little entourage, and she looked at me like I was a stain on the floor. She asked me about the patient's medication schedule. I told her. She shook her head, smiled this cold smile, and said in front of everyone, "This is what happens when we hire people who barely made it through nursing school. You're going to kill someone one day, Sarah. You're useless. Completely useless." I stood there frozen, feeling my face burn with shame. The patient was awake, staring at me with pity. The other doctors looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. Dr. Brennan walked out, and I heard her laughing in the hallway. I went to the bathroom and cried until my shift ended. That night I called my mom and told her I wanted to quit. She told me to stay strong, that bullies only win if you let them. But it was so hard. Every single day was torture. Years passed. I stayed because I needed the job, because I had student loans, because quitting felt like admitting she was right about me. I became invisible. I did my work, kept my head down, avoided Dr. Brennan as much as possible. Other nurses came and went. Some of them stood up to her and got fired or transferred. I survived by being small, by never causing problems, by accepting that this was just my reality. I stopped believing I could be good at my job. I stopped dreaming about advancing in my career. I was just getting through each shift, counting the hours until I could go home. But something strange happened during those years. Because I was always trying to avoid mistakes, always double-checking everything, always studying on my own time to make sure Dr. Brennan couldn't catch me messing up, I actually became really good at my job. I knew medications better than nurses with twice my experience. I could spot complications before they became serious. I had read so many medical journals and textbooks trying to prepare for her trick questions that I had learned things most nurses never bothered to learn. I wasn't useless. I was actually skilled, but I didn't realize it because her voice was always in my head, telling me I was worthless. Then there was this one specific thing I became kind of obsessed with. About 4 years into working at Memorial Grace, I read an article about a rare complication that can happen during certain types of surgery. It's called an air embolism, and it happens when air gets into the bloodstream and travels to vital organs. It's incredibly dangerous, incredibly rare, and incredibly hard to diagnose quickly, because the symptoms look like a lot of other things. The article explained that if you don't catch it in the first few minutes, the patient usually dies. There's a specific technique to treat it, a positioning technique combined with immediate intervention, but most medical professionals never see a case in their entire career. I don't know why, but I became fascinated with this. I read everything I could find about air embolisms. I watched videos. I studied case reports. I learned the exact signs to look for, the exact timing, the exact treatment protocol. It became like my weird hobby, this obscure medical knowledge that I collected just because it interested me. I never thought I would actually use it. I never thought it would matter. It was just something I did to feel like I was still learning, still growing, even though my job had become this soul-crushing routine of avoiding Dr. Brennan and trying not to get humiliated. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Tuesday in October, around 10 at night. I was working the night shift, which I preferred because Dr. Brennan was rarely there after 7. The surgical floor was quiet. Most of the patients were sleeping. I was doing my rounds, checking on people, adjusting blankets, making sure everyone was comfortable. It was peaceful, the kind of shift where you could actually think, where you could remember why you wanted to be a nurse in the first place. Then the emergency alarm went off. Code blue, surgical suite 3. I ran toward the operating rooms, my heart pounding. When I got there, chaos. There had been an emergency surgery, a patient who came in with a ruptured appendix. The surgery should have been routine, but something had gone wrong. The patient had crashed on the table. The surgical team was panicking. And standing in the middle of it all, covered in blood, looking more shaken than I had ever seen her, was Dr. Catherine Brennan. She saw me run in, and her face twisted with anger. "What are you doing here? Get out. You're useless in an emergency." But the charge nurse, a woman named Linda who had always been kind to me, grabbed my arm and said, "Sarah, we need everyone. Patients in cardiac arrest. Help us." I stepped into that operating room and saw the patient on the table. Monitors were screaming. The anesthesiologist was manually ventilating. Another surgeon was doing chest compressions. Dr. Brennan was shouting orders, but her hands were shaking. I had never seen her like this. She was always so controlled, so confident. Now she looked terrified. I watched the monitors. I watched the patient's symptoms. Something was wrong. Something beyond the cardiac arrest. The patient's oxygen levels were dropping too fast. The heart rhythm was all wrong. The skin color was changing in a way that didn't match what should have been happening. And then I saw it, a detail so small that everyone else had missed it. During the surgery, when they had been repositioning the patient, there had been a moment where the central line had been temporarily disconnected. Just a second, maybe 2, and the patient had been in an upright position, not fully flat. Air embolism. It hit me like lightning. This was an air embolism. Air had gotten into the central line, traveled through the bloodstream, and was now blocking blood flow to the heart and lungs. That's why nothing was working. That's why the patient was dying. They were treating a cardiac arrest, but the real problem was the air bubble traveling through the circulatory system. I opened my mouth to say something, but Dr. Brennan was still shouting orders, and everyone was moving so fast. I felt that old fear creep in, that voice in my head saying, "You're useless. You don't know anything. Stay quiet." But then I looked at the patient's face, at this person who was dying, and I thought about all those years I had spent studying, all those nights reading about rare complications, all that knowledge I had collected. And I thought, what if I'm right? What if this person dies because I was too scared to speak up? I stepped forward. My voice came out stronger than I expected. "Dr. Brennan, stop. This is an air embolism." The room went silent. Everyone turned to look at me. Dr. Brennan's face went red with rage. "What did you just say? How dare you interrupt during a code? Get out of my OR right now. But I didn't move. I couldn't. Look at the patient. Look at the symptoms. The oxygen saturation dropping despite ventilation. The EKG pattern. The skin modeling. The central line was disconnected for a moment when the patient was upright. Air got into the line. This is a venous air embolism. If we don't treat it right now, in the next 2 minutes, this patient is going to die. The anesthesiologist looked at me, then at the monitors, and his eyes went wide. She might be right. Those symptoms, they match. Dr. Brennan's face was pure fury. This is ridiculous. She's a floor nurse. She doesn't know anything about surgical complications. We're treating a cardiac arrest and that's final. But Linda, the charge nurse, put her hand on Dr. Brennan's arm. Catherine, what if she's right? What if we're missing it? We're losing this patient. Nothing we're doing is working. The other surgeon in the room, a younger doctor named Marcus, nodded. Air embolism would explain everything. The timeline fits. Dr. Brennan, we should at least try the protocol. Dr. Brennan looked like she was going to explode. She looked at me with pure hatred. But then she looked at the patient, at the monitors showing that death was seconds away, and something in her face changed. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was pride, not wanting to lose a patient in her OR. Maybe some tiny part of her actually listened. Fine. You have 90 seconds. If this doesn't work, you're done. You'll never work in medicine again. 90 seconds. That's all I had. I started giving orders, and it felt surreal, like I was in someone else's body. We need to position the patient immediately. Left lateral decubitus position, head down, Trendelenburg. Now. This will trap the air bubble in the right ventricle and prevent it from reaching the pulmonary circulation. The team hesitated for half a second, then moved. They tilted the operating table, positioning the patient exactly how I had studied. Anesthesiologist. Increase the oxygen to 100%. We need to help dissolve the nitrogen in the bubble. He adjusted the ventilator immediately. Someone get me an ultrasound. We need to visualize the heart. A nurse ran to get the portable machine. My hands weren't shaking. My mind was completely clear. This was everything I had studied, everything I had learned in those lonely nights when I was trying to prove to myself that I wasn't useless. The ultrasound arrived. I placed the probe on the patient's chest, and there it was on the screen. Exactly what I knew we would find. A large air bubble in the right ventricle swirling around, preventing the heart from pumping effectively. There. See it? That's the embolism. Now we need to aspirate it. We need a central line catheter advanced into the right atrium. Can you do that? I looked at Dr. Brennan. Her face was pale, but she nodded. Her hands were still shaking, so Dr. Marcus stepped in. I'll do it. Talk me through it, Sarah. I guided him through the procedure, describing exactly where to position the catheter, exactly how to attempt aspiration of the air. Every medical professional in that room was listening to me, a nurse they had ignored for years, and following my instructions. The seconds felt like hours. We were working against time, against death itself. The catheter went in. Dr. Marcus began aspirating. On the ultrasound screen, I watched the air bubble get smaller. The patient's oxygen levels started to climb. The heart rhythm began to stabilize. It's working, the anesthesiologist whispered. Oh my God, it's actually working. We continued the treatment, maintaining the position, aspirating more air, monitoring every single vital sign. Slowly, minute by minute, the patient came back. The heart started beating regularly. The oxygen levels returned to normal. The skin color improved. After 10 minutes of intensive treatment, the patient was stable. After 20 minutes, we could cautiously say the patient was going to survive. The operating room erupted in relieved chatter. Nurses were hugging each other. Dr. Marcus was staring at me like he had seen a miracle. Linda had tears in her eyes. And Dr. Brennan was standing in the corner, silent, staring at the floor. The patient was transferred to intensive care. The surgery would have to be completed later, once everything was fully stable, but the immediate crisis was over. I had saved a life. I had diagnosed a complication so rare that most doctors never see it. I had done it in 90 seconds under pressure with everyone doubting me, and I had been right. As the room cleared out, I stood there, my legs shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. Dr. Brennan walked up to me. I expected her to yell, to find some way to twist this into another humiliation, but she just stood there, looking at me with an expression I couldn't read. Finally, she spoke, and her voice was barely a whisper. How did you know? I took a breath. I studied it. Years ago, I read about air embolisms, and I couldn't stop learning about them. I read every case study I could find. I learned the symptoms, the treatment, everything. I wanted to know. I wanted to be prepared in case I ever saw one. She shook her head slowly. I've been a surgeon for 23 years. I've performed thousands of surgeries. I didn't recognize it. I would have let that patient die. Her voice cracked. You saved a life that I was losing. You, the nurse I called useless. The silence between us was heavy. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to scream at her, to tell her how much she had hurt me, how many nights I had cried because of her, how close I had come to giving up on everything I loved because of her cruelty. But another part of me just felt tired of carrying all that pain. Why did you hate me so much? I asked quietly. What did I ever do to you? Dr. Brennan closed her eyes. You didn't do anything. That's the truth. You didn't do anything to deserve any of it. She opened her eyes and I saw tears there. When I was a young doctor, I was a lot like you. Quiet, hardworking, trying to prove myself in a world that didn't think I belonged. And there was a senior surgeon who made my life hell. He called me stupid. He humiliated me in front of patients. He told me I would never be a real surgeon. He broke something in me, and instead of healing from it, I became him. I saw you, this young nurse who reminded me of who I used to be, and I took out all my old pain on you. It was wrong. It was cruel. And tonight you showed me that I became the exact monster I hated. I didn't expect that. I didn't expect honesty. I didn't expect remorse. For years I had imagined confronting her, imagined her apologizing, but now that it was happening, I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. I just felt sad. Sad for her. Sad for me. Sad for all the years wasted on this cycle of hurt. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said. You really hurt me. You made me believe I was worthless. I almost quit nursing because of you. I know, she said, and I don't expect forgiveness. But I need you to hear this. You are not useless. You are not incompetent. You are one of the best medical professionals I have ever seen. What you did tonight, the knowledge you have, the way you stayed calm under pressure, the way you fought for that patient even when I tried to silence you, that's what makes a great nurse. That's what saves lives. I was wrong about you. I was wrong about everything. Over the following weeks, things changed at Memorial Grace Hospital. The story of what happened in that operating room spread through the entire hospital. Suddenly, everyone knew my name. Doctors started asking me questions, actually listening to my answers. Nurses treated me with respect. The hospital administration called me in and offered me a position in the intensive care unit, a promotion with better pay. They said they wanted nurses who could think critically and act decisively. They said I was exactly what they needed. Dr. Brennan changed too. She didn't become my best friend or anything like that. We weren't going to have lunch together and laugh about old times. But she stopped being cruel. She started treating all the nurses with more respect. She began a mentorship program for new medical staff, and several times, when complicated cases came up, she actually asked for my input. She would say, "Sarah, you see things others miss. What do you think?" It was strange, being valued by someone who had spent years tearing me down. The patient I saved, a 52-year-old man named Robert, recovered fully. When he was well enough to understand what had happened, he asked to meet me. He held my hand and cried, thanking me for giving him more time with his family. He said I was his angel. I told him I was just a nurse doing my job, but he shook his head. He said not everyone would have spoken up. Not everyone would have fought to be heard. He was right about that. What I learned from all of this is that you can't let other people's opinions define who you are. For years I believed Dr. Brennan when she said I was useless. I let her voice become my inner voice. I stopped seeing my own worth, but the truth was always there. I was capable. I was knowledgeable. I was good at what I did. The only thing that changed that night wasn't my skills or my knowledge. It was my willingness to trust myself, to believe that maybe I knew something important, to speak up even when I was terrified. I also learned that hurt people hurt people. Dr. Brennan was cruel because someone had been cruel to her. That doesn't excuse what she did, but it helps me understand it, and understanding it helps me let go of some of the anger. I don't have to carry her pain anymore. I don't have to let what she did define my entire career, my entire life. I still work at Memorial Grace Hospital. I'm in the ICU now, working with the most critical patients. using everything I've learned to make a difference. I love my job. I'm good at my job. And I finally believe that about myself. Some of the new nurses come to me with their problems, and I try to be the person I needed when I was starting out. I listen to them. I encourage them. I tell them they belong here, that their questions matter, that they're not stupid for not knowing something yet. Dr. Brennan and I exist in this strange space now. Not friends, but not enemies either. Sometimes I catch her watching me work, and there's something in her expression. Maybe regret, maybe respect, maybe both. She published a paper about rare surgical complications, and she listed me as a contributor. She didn't have to do that, but she did. It was her way of saying what she couldn't say out loud, that I taught her something, that I mattered. The night of the air embolism changed my life. It gave me my confidence back. It showed me that all those years of quiet studying, all that knowledge I had collected thinking it didn't matter, actually did matter. It mattered in the most important way possible. It saved a life. And it showed me that being called useless doesn't make you useless. Other people's words don't define your worth. Your actions do. Your knowledge does. Your willingness to keep going, even when everything is hard, that's what defines you. I think about that night often. I think about those 90 seconds when I had to choose between staying silent and speaking up. I think about how easy it would have been to just back down, to let Dr. Brennan dismiss me like she always had, to go back to being invisible. But something in me refused. Something in me said, "This is your moment. This is when you show yourself what you're really made of." And I listened to that voice instead of hers. If you're going through something similar, if someone in your life is telling you that you're not good enough, that you're worthless, that you'll never amount to anything, I need you to hear this. They're wrong. They're speaking from their own pain, their own insecurity, their own brokenness. You are not what they say you are. You are what you choose to become. Keep learning. Keep growing. Keep believing that you have something valuable to offer this world, because you do. And one day, when the moment comes, when you have the chance to show what you're capable of, you'll be ready. All that quiet work, all that preparation, all that knowledge you think nobody sees, it's building something in you. It's preparing you for the moment when you'll step forward and save the day. I was the nurse they called useless. But when it mattered most, when a life hung in the balance, I was the only person in that room who knew what to do. And that's not luck. That's not coincidence. That's the result of refusing to give up, refusing to believe the lies, refusing to let cruelty win. You have that same strength in you. I know you do. So if you connected with this story, if you felt something hearing about my journey, I need you to do something for me. Subscribe to this channel. Hit that button right now. Because I'm going to keep sharing these stories, these moments when people who were counted out came back and proved everyone wrong. Leave a comment below and tell me your story. Tell me about a time someone doubted you and you proved them wrong, or tell me about the doubt you're facing right now. Let's build a community of people who refuse to be defined by other people's limitations. And watch the next video, because trust me, the story I'm going to tell you next will remind you just how powerful you really are. You are not useless. You never were. And it's time you started believing that.